Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of Outside the Letterbox. Today, we're going to discuss what we've watched recently, talk about some film news, and then get into a little bit of a summer movie preview. I think each of us is going to go through and talk about some of the movies we're most excited to see this summer, the summer of 2014. But first, you can find more episodes of Outside the Letterbox on our website, the-letterbox.com, as well as articles and news about movies. You can find our podcast on iTunes by just searching for Outside the Letterbox and on Feedburner. Leave us a review on iTunes or comment on our site. Today I am joined by my co-hosts.
Me, Joe.
Hey, I'm Nick.
All right, and we're just going to get started. I'm going to start by talking about what I've watched recently, because I can only just recommend them to people. I watched The Maltese Falcon, which I've owned for a while, and I think I watched part of a while ago, but then ran out of time and didn't get a chance to finish, so I rewatched it, all of it, this time, and it was really good. I don't really have anything else to say about it. It's really good. It's a classic. I think everybody should see it.
Yeah, that's a good sales pitch right there, Paul. No, I really like the Maltese Falcon. That was one of the first Humphrey Bogart movies I saw, and I think it was definitely one of his early movies that kind of launched him from being just like a side character, because he used to play just a bunch of like thugs and henchmen until I think Maltese Falcon and High Sierra. I think they both came out around the same time. That kind of is what catapulted him to stardom. But yeah, no, it's a really good movie. I
just want to say something I find interesting about movies like made in that time, in that era, I guess, or at least some of them, is that they seem kind of small in the sense that it felt like Maltese Falcon only had like at most like 8 sets or something.
Yeah.
And the whole movie was done in those sets with maybe some outside stuff. But that was really interesting to me that it was just so really interesting, but so sort of small in terms of its production.
Yeah, and even the cast of characters is pretty small. It's pretty much just Humphrey Bogart, Peter Lorre, Sidney Greenstreet, and then I can't remember the actress's name. But there aren't that many characters in the movie either, from what I remember.
Yeah. It almost feels like a play.
Yeah.
In that regard. And then the other movie I watched, which is famous, is the Alfred Hitchcock North by Northwest. I've watched it before, but I rewatched it, and I actually wrote an article concerning both these movies. But North by Northwest was the most obvious one, where this was apparent to me. Is just the style of acting is so different and funny compared to what we get now, and not in a bad way. Like, I can still watch North by Northwest and take it seriously, but when you watch it, for the third time or so, you start to realize more and more that it's ridiculous for who is it, Cary Grant, to just kiss Grace Kelly in the middle of an argument, just to sort of shut her up. But it's obviously a great movie. Really interesting. Actually, no, I'm not even thinking of North by Northwest. I don't know why I put North by Northwest, you guys.
Oh, what are you thinking of?
North by Northwest is what I watched like 2 months ago. Shoot, what did I watch?
You watch To Catch a Thief?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay. That's
My bad. I was like, wait, I just realized I don't think Grace Kelly isn't in North by Northwest. That's where I came from. What the heck? Yeah, I watched To Catch a Thief, which is by Alfred Hitchcock. Anyway, but that's the one where I noticed it, and it's a great movie. It's really entertaining, again, really interesting. I gotta say, I actually hadn't seen To Catch a Thief before, but I sort of guessed how it was going to end, but I think that might just be because a lot of movies have taken from that at this point. But it's a great movie. But like I said, the whole acting thing is very interesting. So anyway, I'm going to pass it to Nick, unless you guys have something to say about To Catch a Thief.
No, I'm good.
No, I've actually seen To Catch a Thief before. It's been a while though. I seem to remember that being one of Hitchcock's better ones though.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable. So I guess I'm gonna pass it to Joe. Joe, what is that?
Screw you, Nick. No, just kidding. Um, Anywho, I actually had a pretty productive week movie-wise. Actually, I saw quite a few movies in the past, like around Thursday, Friday, that kind of stuff. First off, I saw Oculus. Actually, you know what? Let me backtrack a little bit. I saw Under the Skin earlier this week, which I could probably have the most to say about that. However, I am currently working on an article, just kind of looking at Under the Skin and kind of art films in general. So I think I'm going to save that one for the article, which will be posted hopefully in the next couple days, if you want my thoughts on that. Other than that, though, I went to go see Oculus. So this is one I've been looking forward to since I saw the trailer. Because like there's not, I don't know, it's really hard to read this movie. I've heard a lot of good things about it. A lot of people I've talked to who have seen the movie actually really enjoyed it. Honestly, it's a really stupid movie.
Oh, don't tell me that.
No, I mean, like, it's. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to talk too much about it because again, I don't want to spoil anything, so I don't want to even get close to that. But it's. I think I went in expecting kind of a really good horror film, kind of on the level of like a James Wan movie, that kind of stuff. And instead, it has more in common with kind of the smaller, lower budget stuff. I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head. But I mean, like something like Dark Skies or The Last Exorcism Part 2. Like it feels like it fits in kind of that niche of film. It's certainly. I'd probably say it's quote unquote better than those movies. I personally just enjoyed like The Last Exorcism Part 2 a lot more than this one. I mean, like if you're gonna be comparing the two, you know, Oculus is probably, I don't know. It's the trailers make it look a lot smarter than I feel like it actually is, and the film itself feels like it thinks it's really clever. But a lot of things they kind of go for is kind of like, oh, okay, so they're doing this with this movie, or they're going that route, stuff like that. But that's all I'm going to say about it for right now, because again, I know, Paul, you're still looking forward to that one. So I'm really curious to hear your opinion of it. I know you watch a lot of horror films as well. It'd be really interesting if we could compare notes after you've gotten a chance to go see that one.
When you say you were hoping for the quality of a James Wan film, are you talking like Dead Silence, Saw 4, James Wan?
No, I think I was expecting more like. I was thinking more like, I mean, like, well, for one thing, I wasn't really expecting a terribly smart movie, but I was expecting something that had some really good scares, you know, maybe had a couple surprises up its sleeve, that kind of stuff. What they ended up going for, I felt, was more on the level of like a straight to DVD sort of movie, just with better quality effects, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just felt a lot more amateurish and thinking it was smarter than it actually was, if that makes any sense, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I wasn't scared by it. Then again, I'm scared by completely different things. So yeah, really curious to hear your guys' opinion of that one. I'm still looking forward to going to see The Quiet Ones, which also opened this weekend. I didn't have a chance to see it yet. That one, I have a feeling I'll probably really enjoy that one, and it'll probably be pretty stupid. I also had a chance. The other two movies I want to talk about briefly was I saw Only Lovers Left Alive, which is the vampire romance film starring Tom Hiddleston that came out this past week. I really wasn't sure what to think about this one before I went in. I mean, just judging on trailers, I wasn't sure whether or not to expect to really like it, whether I was going to hate it, whether it's going to fall into the realm of Twilight, which it didn't. It's nothing like Twilight, so don't even try comparing the two. But it feels like it's a... well, first off, I really enjoyed it. I actually liked it a lot more than I think I would have liked to have liked it. Basically, it's like a vampire movie for hipsters, kind of. And it's interesting because there's not really much of a plot. Like the film, it centers on these characters. You know, Tom Hiddleston is a reclusive vampire living, you know, as he's a music artist. And And the idea is that he's been around for several hundred years. He's married to Tilda Swinton, but she lives in Tangier. He lives in Detroit. And the entire movie takes place at nighttime, first off. Like, I was thinking back on it. I don't think there's a single scene that takes place during the day, because to them, vampires, daytime is nighttime, basically. So you kind of see the world from the perspective of these guys who, they're not bad people. You know, they get their blood to, you know, by non-nefarious means. He gets, you know, blood from the hospital. You know, these little canisters of blood. He has inside connections with the doctor and that kind of stuff. They drink blood out of wine glasses. So the movie's really more a story, not necessarily about vampires, but it's about these lonely people who, because of what they are, they're forced to live at nighttime. You'll be out and about at nighttime when everyone else in society is asleep. So you see a lot of these scenes of them kind of driving around, you know, out at nighttime, walking the streets of Detroit. You know, nobody's out there, and it's just kind of a look into these people who just live very reclusively. It's really interesting. It does feel very hipsterish in a way, which I feel kind of weird saying, just because they dress in old fashioned, and they kind of had this air about them of throwing around these weird terms. I don't know, because they've been around for like a few hundred years. He wrote music for Handel, I think, back in the day. They know John Hurt's a vampire in this movie too. He apparently wrote stuff for Shakespeare. So it's just, I don't know, it's a really interesting movie, not really focused on plot. It's just more focused on these characters and just seeing how they live out their lives, which I found to be really interesting. So I definitely think it's worth checking out, but it's a very weird movie and certainly not for everybody.
Yeah, Jim Jarmusch is kind of an interesting director. I haven't seen too much of his other films. I remember the one was Dead Man, which is a Western with Johnny Depp, but it's really like, it was like a psychedelic Western. So I've always been interested to check out more of his stuff, because I know he was really big in like the early 90s independent movement. But I don't know, it's cool to know that you liked it, because it seemed interesting to me. You know?
Yeah, it is. It's more interesting than anything. I mean, like I think my appreciation of the film didn't come out of it necessarily being a really good movie, but it came out from it being really kind of an interesting and a fascinating movie that I don't think I felt like I'd seen anything like it. I almost want to say it feels like if Richard Linklater made a toned down vampire romance almost, but a little bit weirder than that, you know.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the cast, and it looks like Paul's favorite actor, Anton Yelchin's in the movie too.
Right, man. No, I've been planning on seeing this one too, but
Anton Yelchin is great in this movie, by the way. He's like one of the few like human characters in this. He's like Tom Hiddleston's like outside connection, like his buddy who comes in and like delivers like music and guitars and that kind of stuff to him. So he's Anton Yelchin is easily one of the best things about this movie.
Nice. That's good.
And then finally, one last one I want to talk about briefly. I'll try to keep this short, but The Raid 2. This is a movie I have been so excited for ever since they announced it, because I think we mentioned in a previous episode, I am a huge fan of Gareth Evans' The Raid. I'd put it up there as one of my favorite action films of all time, just because the original Raid was a very simple plot, something along the lines of like Die Hard, or I know we talked about Dread a few weeks ago also. Where it's just kind of like, it's about a SWAT team fighting their way from the bottom of the building to the top of the building. You know, it's focused on this main character and trying to. It's kind of like the main character is a SWAT agent. His brother works for the drug lord, and it's about them trying to get back together while they're at odds during this whole thing. So, original Raid, fantastic movie. This second one is an entirely different kind of movie. It's focused on basically you have characters from the first movie. It takes place moments after the end of the first one, and the main character from the Raid, the cops basically have him go undercover for this crime lord, because they want to find out about police corruption in these mob syndicates. So the whole movie takes place over the span of actually a couple years as he's going undercover and kind of cozying up to these bad guys and learning about their ins and outs and all that kind of stuff and all their secrets. So the movie, it's a much broader film. It's almost an ensemble piece actually, because it doesn't focus on the main character for that much. The movie it focuses on kind of these side characters a lot more. There's a lot more dialogue, a lot more conspiracy going on. That being said, it is a very well made movie. I actually really enjoyed this one a lot. I'd probably say for what The Raid went for, the first one is a better movie than The Raid 2. The Raid 2, though, it's very well made. I was interested in what was going on the whole time, what the characters were doing, why they were doing these things, all that kind of stuff. The action is probably some of the most brutal action I've ever seen in a movie. The first one was kind of it's weird thinking of The Raid being restrained, but it was very straightforward. And there's no outlandish violence. It's kind of like they had all these fight scenes, people shooting down walls and jumping through windows, that kind of stuff. It was very brutal, very bloody, but it wasn't anything weird. It was just all knives and karate and that kind of stuff. In this one, the filmmakers are trying to have a little bit more fun with it in a way, as in like for instance, this one has a character who she's some she's a hitman. And she kind of wears, like regular civilian clothes, like a skirt and like a jacket and that kind of stuff. But her thing is that she carries around a pair of hammers in her purse, and that's how she takes out all these bad guys. And she takes out, like crowds of bad guys at a time, with these hammers. Or you have like another guy. His credit is baseball bat man, where he's a guy with a baseball bat and a baseball, and he basically like sees people from a distance and swings his baseball. Basically he hits a baseball towards people and kills them from a distance. It's like really bizarre stuff like that kind of thrown throughout the movie. But again, it's really fun. I think they could have been a little bit more restrained in some of the violence, just because it gets to a point where you're like, okay, you're just being overly grotesque and bloody just for the sake of it. But the movie itself is really interesting. Still a lot of fun. The main character, you get more insights into him in this movie. And you kind of learn more about his background, the kind of person he becomes. So he doesn't do a whole lot during the movie, but they give him more to do. Like as the movie gets on, it reaches its climax. He's given a lot more to do. So basically, to round it off, very very fun, very exhausting. I think it could have been trimmed down a little bit. I think they could have shown a little more discretion in how much of the violence they showed. But in the end, I think it's a worthy sequel to The Raid.
All right, sweet. So Nick, what have you watched recently?
So I watched. I got 4 films this week. One's more of just a quick recommendation than an actual discussion. But there's a really awesome documentary on Netflix right now called Milius, and it's on John Milius, who was a famous screenwriter, director in Hollywood in the 1970s and 80s. He came up in the same group that Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Scorsese. He wrote one of my favorite movies of all time, Apocalypse Now. He also wrote Jeremiah Johnson. He directed Conan the Barbarian, the original Red Dawn. And he's just kind of an interesting person. The Coen brothers, actually, when they were making The Big Lebowski, based the John Goodman character on John Milius. So he's this really interesting kind of gun-toting, very opinionated screenwriter who's kind of it's kind of when we think of screenwriters, we kind of think of just like guys who are just kind of like in their little corner and kind of real bookish and just writing all the time. But this is a guy who's more kind of, if we're talking about writers in general, he's probably closer to an Ernest Hemingway than anything else. And I just think it's a real interesting look in kind of that time period of filmmaking too, and so if you ever get the chance, check it out. In terms of the movies I really want to discuss, I watched for the first time Big Fish, which is Tim Burton's movie from about, I think, like 10 years ago, and I really liked it. I love the first half of it, and then the second half, not quite as much, but I think it actually might be one of my favorite Tim Burton movies, if not my favorite. And I think the huge part of that is just that the whole movie is about kind of storytelling and myth making and kind of how kind of the stories become, how you basically become the stories that you tell. The story is kind of this father who spends his whole life, his life story involves like giants and tall tales and witches and kind of all this stuff, and his son doesn't really believe that that's who his father is, so he keeps trying to find out the truth, especially as his father gets close to his death. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I just found it a really kind of moving, interesting movie. You know, a story about storytellers. Yeah,
Yeah,
I liked it a lot.
I've seen the movie probably 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that it's your favorite Tim Burton movie because a lot of people have called it the least Tim Burton-esque Tim Burton movie
Yeah.
made. Which I don't know that that's entirely fair. Ed Wood isn't that weird. I guess it's not really fair, but I guess in terms of the style, but the I think it's a great movie. I think it's a really interesting and entertaining sort of movie about storytelling, like you said, Nick, and also about like a father and a son. So it's yeah, I would highly recommend that movie if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I just think like the type of myth that it goes for is a very, you know, it's very like Americana, you know, early 1900s that we don't see a lot in movies today, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I haven't seen it in a while. I remember I watched it probably like a year or two ago, I think. I'm gonna go against the grain here and just say that I remember not really liking it that much, and it wasn't because of the stuff. I mean, like I love the storytelling aspects of it. I think my problem with it was more of, and again, like I don't remember it that well because I kind of watched it once. Remember, I didn't like it that much, and I just kind of forgot about it. I seem to remember though I had a problem with the idea that I felt like the movie came out. The movie said, and you might be able to correct me on this, Nick. Was that I thought it was saying that like interesting stories are better than the not as interesting truth. Is that right? Is that right? Because I seem to remember being really kind of disappointed in how it ended up because it was a very interesting, very well shot movie. It kind of bugged me at the end there. Is that right? Was that accurate?
I know that's what some people get from the ending. I thought it was just kind of like how there's truth even in like the tallest of tales. Like I didn't think of it as like when the truth becomes fact or when the legend becomes fact, print the legend. I thought it was just more like I don't know. I thought that like in all these stories that he's telling, there's still a huge amount of truth in it, even if it's possibly been embellished. That's how I got out of it, and obviously that's an opinion thing. I don't know if the movie really has a definitive statement on that.
Yeah. What one movie I do remember that kind of tackled the same issue that I did really enjoy a lot, and of course I think a lot of people mention this whenever Big Fish comes into topics is what's it called? Secondhand Lions. I felt like, and again, it's been a while since I've seen Secondhand Lions as well. I just remember that one kind of being the same sort of thing of a guy telling us stories about his past and that kind of stuff. For some reason, I think I really enjoyed the way that one handled it more, though. I should probably actually rewatch both of those movies, maybe back to back, to kind of be able to compare them and analyze them a little bit better.
I Big Fish is a considerably better movie than Secondhand Lions. I would not watch it. But the Big Fish is I don't something interesting about what you're bringing up, Joe, isn't necessarily in the movie what the dad's telling the son, like the stories he's telling, or I don't remember specifically when he's telling who the stories, but the stories he's telling, a lot of them they're narrated by him, but like what he's saying, like what you're seeing, I feel like has always been more what the person he's telling is imagining in the movie. So he's telling these stories, and yeah, some things are embellished, like human beings tell stories, and it's not lying. It's like telling the story with hyperbole. And then in the end, you find out, oh, those two women weren't actually attached at the hip, or there's stuff like weren't literally attached at the hip, but there were still these twins. And I don't know that it was that the story is more interesting than the truth, but more about how I think it's more about how everybody's. I guess I felt like it was more about how the story of our lives are interesting, regardless of what how simple or how boring they might seem. And that was at least a bigger thing to me than maybe just guess what Nick was talking about with the the benefit, I guess, of storytelling. So I guess very much disagree about what you're saying in regards to its theme, that the story is better than the truth. Anyway, so I guess I just strongly disagree.
Yeah. Well, again, I should probably watch it again. On that note, though, Secondhand Lions is an excellent movie. That one I kind of grew up on.
Secondhand Lions is like an okay movie.
Because the conversation about that one, but that one I could watch a million times over.
That's like recommending The Pagemaster to everybody. That's like, I grew up on The Pagemaster, and I really like. Wait, I grew up on The Pagemaster. I really like The Pagemaster, but The Pagemaster is not a very good movie.
Secondhand Lions is a very good movie, though. Is the thing is that like The Pagemaster is one that's great when you're a kid. The Secondhand Lions just in general, just a very well made, very funny movie.
I disagree. I think it's a really boring movie.
Yeah, well, to each his own.
Anyway,
I have no opinion on that. But moving on, so another movie that I saw this week was Snow White and the Huntsman, and I thought it was really interesting because I was just kind of going about my week, and I suddenly got the urge to see it, which was, way more than I did when it came out, 2 years ago. And I was surprised at how much I liked it. But that being said, I still think the movie is kind of hit and miss. But it's definitely one of the better of these modern day fairy tale adaptations that have come out recently. But I think huge problems for me are actually in the two title characters. The big thing that always kind of excited me about Snow White and the Huntsman was the idea of the Huntsman character and kind of expanding upon him. Because I think he's an interesting character that, you can get a lot of extra stuff out of. And Chris Hemsworth is actually really good in the part. There's some surprisingly emotional scenes that actually are he's, Chris Hemsworth, is not just like a Hollywood hunk that, it's like, oh, we'll just put him in Thor, and oh, we'll just put him in all these big, heavy parts. And it's like, no, this guy's actually a pretty good actor. And I was kind of disappointed that, one, he doesn't show up until a half hour into the movie, and two, kind of how he has this interesting backstory, but they don't really. I don't know. I felt like in the first act they could have used more of him and gotten us to know him better, because I think he is kind of an interesting character, and yeah, I feel like he's more of a glorified co-lead than actually a lead character in the movie, and then kind of in terms of Snow White, I actually thought Kristen Stewart was pretty good in the movie, and I actually don't mind her version of Snow White until the very end. I'll be interested to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but there's kind of been this recent thing in movies where if you want to make a well-developed or a powerful lead female character, you give them a weapon. And so in the end, basically, Snow White kind of becomes Joan of Arc and leads all these people into battle and whatever. And I don't know. To me, putting a sword in her hand doesn't, it's just a leap in the character that isn't set up or anything. It's kind of established. She's a quick thinking character. When she's able to escape the queen's castle, and kind of the huntsman teaches her defense moves when they're in the forest, just so she can survive. But there's nothing beforehand to tell you that she can fight an army and lead a battle and all that stuff. And and on the flip side of that, if she were a male character, I still wouldn't have really believed it just by throwing a sword in her hand. So it just kind of feels like the movie defaults to we have to have something for her to do in the last act, so let's have her do this. And it's no, I think it would have been. I think her character, if there was another way to get her to the castle without leading the battle, I think she still could have had a pretty interesting showdown with the queen without having to be a warrior princess.
Yeah,
Joe, did you see the movie?
I haven't yet. No, that's what I've been wanting to see. Just haven't, I don't know, gotten around to it. I haven't wanted to see it enough that I actually checked it out.
So my biggest problem, I enjoyed the movie all right. I thought it was a little long.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff that happens, and very for all the stuff that's in the trailer, a lot of it was very sort of dull. Like there were scenes with the dwarves and lengthy forest scenes that just didn't. They just sort of dragged on,
Mm.
and felt like it could have been a lot shorter. But my primary problem with the movie was the writing and some of the directing of the actors. Specifically, I really like Kristen Stewart and everything that is in the Twilight movie. I think she was great in Welcome to the Rileys, and she's great in Panic Room. I know she was a little girl in that, but she was really good in The Runaways as well, which I don't recommend watching. But the with Snow White and the Huntsman, she does a fine job, but there's a point where she sort of talks in a very modern way the whole movie,
Hmm.
which is fine. Like that's just sort of what they went with until the point where she gives this like speech at the end to like all these these soldiers or the townspeople or whatever. She gives this speech that sounds like she's spewing like sort of really crappy Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Um, and it's really distracting because the whole rest of the movie she's been talking like she's a teenage, not like a valley girl or anything, but just like a teenager today. And so it was a really distracting change, and I'd agree with you, Nick, that all of a sudden when she starts like leading the army, it's not that she's a girl that bothers me in any way. it's that it doesn't feel like a natural turn for her character at all.
Yeah.
If the fact that she like has the sword in her hand and leads the army, I feel like they could have done something a little more clever than that, where maybe the huntsman is leading the army, which would make more sense in terms of the characters they've established, and she's like sneaking in to face off against the witch or whatever.
Exactly. It's like I was trying to think of like male equivalents to kind of be like, oh, you don't, you know, but like the example I was thinking of was like even in Episode 4 of Star Wars, like they give, Obi-Wan gives Luke the lightsaber, but he never actually uses it. His
Right,
big heroic act is doing something that you've established the whole movie that he's really good at flying a spaceship. And
right,
so for me, it's like I don't mind if she had her face off with the queen if she snuck in with the dwarves or something, like if it was something more in line with her character, because that was the whole movie. She's sneaking and running and hiding around and not. In nowhere else in the movie does she actually fight people. She's always running away from getting shot at by arrows or something.
yeah,
But I like, like on paper, like a lot of the things of the movie, the ideas or concepts that the movie throws out, I think are really good. I just think the execution is hit or miss. But when it was all said and done, I still had a positive reaction to it, which I wasn't really expecting. But I was kind of, I'm glad I watched it. It's also like even just visually, the movie's pretty stunning. I like the mirror concept. There's a troll that pops up at one point. It's just like there's some very cool looks and textures to the movie that I think obviously that's not enough to make up for some of the script problems, but it definitely makes it an interesting watch. It's never boring. I
yeah.
don't um,
Uh, I mean, I guess I disagree, but I know people who agree with you, so
yeah.
that's a really entertaining movie. So
But yeah, but moving on to my last pick, and kind of the biggest thing I saw this week was William Friedkin's Sorcerer. And this is an interesting movie with quite a bit of history, because William Friedkin, he directed The French Connection, he directed The Exorcist, and after he had done those two movies, he's kind of in the same boat that George Lucas is in when he was able to do Star Wars, and where Spielberg was in and able to he kind of gotten to that point where it's like, I can do my dream project. And his dream project was remaking a French film from the 1950s that I'm also a huge fan of, called The Wages of Fear. Um, and the interesting thing is he does it kind of as a very loose remake. He kind of, things that were huge set pieces in that movie are minor scenes in this, and he makes his own. And just like the French film, this is one of the most suspenseful movies I've ever seen. And it's one of those movies that, like, watching it today, it's like, I can't believe this isn't, a classic from back in the day, but the movie had the unfortunate luck of opening up about a month after Star Wars, and just kind of the whole cinematic landscape had changed and kind of left it in the dust, because Sorcerer is a very kind of, like, dark, gritty, the ending is very ambiguous, and, as opposed to kind of what people were getting, these, like, feel-good Saturday matinee, emotions when they went to go see Star Wars, and Sorcerer is the exact opposite of it. But it's one of those movies that I'm so glad that it's been restored. I highly recommend watching it, and if you guys get the chance, see it on the biggest screen you can, or in the best quality you can, and really make sure it's a movie that you can, like, dedicate the 2 hours to, because I think it's a movie that you really have to immerse yourself in, because it's a journey you have to take with these characters, and if you stick with, in the first part, and you kind of learn the development, those later scenes of suspension, just really get at you. Like, the day or two after seeing the movie, my body was still kind of tensed up from the experience of seeing it, and I can't think of any higher recommendation than that. If this movie could count in the movies that we'd seen so far this year, it would be my favorite. But obviously, the movie came out almost 40 years ago, so.
And that was that was Sorcerer by William Friedkin.
By William Friedkin. Yeah, the title is confusing. So it's not a fantasy movie. Sorcerer is actually the name of one of the trucks that they drive in the movie.
Okay.
So the basic plot is all these guys have to transport unstable nitroglycerin across the roughest terrain possible to put out an oil well. So there's all this great suspension of just, like, it's literally these trucks just inching along, but it's like, that if those things move the wrong way, or, like, there's a scene where they have to go across a rope bridge on these trucks, and just, like, you see the planks slowly start to break apart, and it's so tense and suspenseful. It's just, it's great. Yeah, highly recommend watching it, but watch it on the biggest screen you can in the best quality possible.
Yeah, that's one thing I actually loved about the Wages of Fear, was how much tension they can get out of a movie about just slow-moving trucks that are literally just, like, inching along. I'm a really big fan of the Wages of Fear. I need to get that one on Blu-ray, actually. Thank you, Nick, for introducing me to that one.
Yeah, it was one of those movies that I remember. I think I just found it on Netflix and was like, "Oh, this sounds interesting," and I didn't, because it's it's a foreign film from the 50s, like yeah, and I just remember being totally surprised by it. And Sorcerer is just as good, if not slightly better, than The Wages of Fear.
Yeah. Speaking of William Friedkin, by the way, I was just looking up his IMDb, because I'm curious about what other things he's done besides the Exorcist and Sorcerer, and obviously The French Connection. But I was like, what's happened to him in recent years? Like, I'm looking at this, he did Killer Joe and Bug, like, in the past, say, like, 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, Killer Joe got a lot of praise when it came out, especially because I think it was one of those early movies that took Matthew McConaughey seriously as an actor. That's kind of led him to the point he's at right now. But yeah, he definitely has a very diverse film career. The 70s were definitely, like, his peak, in terms of, like, him, critics and audiences, But yeah, he's a very interesting director, a very interesting one to listen to. If you ever get the chance, there are a lot of good talks with him on YouTube you can check out.
Yeah. He reminds me of David Cronenberg, kind of like, you never know what he's gonna do next.
Yeah. So the actually Killer. It's interesting that he directed Killer Joe. Killer Joe was an acclaimed play before it was a movie, and the guy who wrote Killer Joe also wrote August Osage County, which just came out this year. It's just all kind of interesting.
Yeah, Bug. I think William Friedkin's Bug is also written by the same person who did those two plays. So
yeah, it's Tracy Letts who did those. So
yeah.
All right. Anyway, we got to move it along. So we're actually going to, I think, skip the news articles we're going to talk about today, and instead talk about some of the movies that we're most excited to see. And then that is just a topic that I think we wanted to address somewhat, and it has to do with the marketing of especially summer blockbusters. So I guess I'm just going to open the question to whoever wants to answer it first. What are like the top 2 or 3 movies you're most excited to see this summer?
Well, me personally, at the top of the list probably would be Godzilla. I was kind of raised on Godzilla, the old Japanese ones. My dad showed me a lot of those when I was growing up. I remember seeing the American Godzilla, the 1998 one, in theaters actually. And even though I look at it now, I'm like, yeah, it wasn't a very good movie. I remember really enjoying it as a kid, just because I was like, what, probably about 7 years old at the time, and just to be a kid to see, another giant monster movie with Godzilla on screen was a lot of fun, despite the flaws. I mean, back then, when you're 7 years old, you're not looking at a movie and trying to dissect it or find what's wrong with it, that kind of stuff. But this one coming up, it really looks like what that '98 Godzilla should have been. Just the idea of a Godzilla movie kind of taken seriously by a director who knows what he's doing, bringing in a lot of stuff like other giant monsters in there, getting the design down right. This movie it looks really, really cool, and it's just really exciting to see kind of the king of the monsters there back on the big screen and taken seriously again. So that's one that I'm really looking forward to personally.
I think for me, the movie I'm looking forward to the most, which I'm kind of surprised by looking at it, like 2014, I feel like doesn't have, I don't know, doesn't have anything as big as like, I don't know, I guess like Iron Man 3 before, or Star Wars, in the next couple of years. Like, there's no one big, I think, defining summer movie that everyone's looking forward to. I think it's pretty diverse, but I think for me, it's probably X-Men: Days of Future Past. I think that's the one I'm just most intrigued by, to see how they pull it off and kind of what they do. It seems like they're trying to like Star Trek the X-Men franchise by I don't know, like doing like a time travel reboot, and so it'll be interesting to see where that movie ends. I also think that last trailer they put out just kind of won me over in terms of like how big it could be, and I've always been a fan of the X-Men movies, some of them more than others, and I'm hoping this one falls into the category of better X-Men movies.
Yeah. Actually, X-Men: Days of Future Past. I put that one on there also. X-Men. I've never had a problem with the X-Men films. I've liked some more than others. This one, I'm just getting vibes that I'm probably really going to love this one. Honestly, maybe it's the time travel, or the combining the two different casts and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It just looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Probably one I'm really going to enjoy a lot.
Yeah, I think it'll just be interesting. I think Days of Future Past is one of the bigger X-Men comic book titles, and I know like already they've changed things around to make it fit within the context of the movies. But yeah, I'm just really intrigued to see how they pull it off.
Yeah. Just kind of looking through what else we got coming up this year. Another one I'm really looking forward to is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan, just in general. I liked Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Whatever. This one looks like it's gonna be cool. It's got apes with shotguns on horses.
I cannot wait for Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. I was really surprised because actually, I think Paul, we saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes together, and I've never been the biggest Planet of the Apes fan, but I really liked Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and
it's actually we all three of us saw Rise of the Planet of the Apes together.
Oh yeah,
it was quite the memorable experience.
For many reasons.
It was a drive-in theater, and it involved an ambulance. That's all I gotta say.
I won't forget that anytime soon.
but yeah, I think Dawn just kind of like apes on horses, apes on shotguns. Like, it's just like it's such a ridiculous thing when you think about it. Like, the fact that Planet of the Apes is even like a huge franchise, because it just sounds like silly. Like, I doubt you could I doubt if someone came up with the idea today, they would be able to successfully pitch it. But it's one of those things that I just love, that we can have a movie like that and kind of have it be taken seriously at this point, Yeah.
I know you guys are excited about it, and I liked Rise of the Planet of the Apes all right. I thought it was decent, but I think the movie might end up flopping.
Why?
First of all, the part of what made Rise of the Planet of the Apes, I think, an attractive thing to people was that it was the reboot of this like fairly popular series. But what made it, that was to the fans that already existed, which I don't think are as many as might support a franchise like this. And what I think made even more people attracted to seeing it was the cast and the concept, and then good word of mouth after it came out. And I'm not this one, while it has the previous movie before it. I don't think this one definitely doesn't have the cast. Like, I guess what I'm thinking specifically is, like, I think James Franco draws a certain crowd that otherwise would not go to see a movie.
That's true.
And I don't know exactly from the marketing that I've seen for this movie. I'm not even sure who it's supposed to, like, attract, because it hasn't, from what I've seen at least, there hasn't been that much action that they've shown, and nothing about it looks like, I don't even know really what it's about. And I know it's still kind of early, but I don't think they have. And from what I've seen from it, I don't think they have as interesting of a premise as they had with the first movie.
Yeah.
Just Draco Malfoy, brings in the crowds too, and we all know he died pretty early. So I'm betting. I would bet not a ton of money, but I'd bet that this movie is not going to do as well as they're hoping it's going to do.
The last one made almost 500 million worldwide, so that would have to be a pretty big. I'm just saying that would have to be a pretty big drop to be a flop. I mean, like, it's possible that, like, it could underperform, what they're expecting it, but.
I guess I wasn't really taking into account it. I think Planet of the Apes might also be more popular overseas, but I'm not sure. I don't know that I was taking that into account when I was thinking about it. But I just feel like there's no, other than the only people I know who are excited for this movie are people who watch movies.
That's fair.
Yeah. I think it's a fair assessment to say that this one probably isn't. I mean, it's not going to do nearly as well as the first one. I think it's going to do decently. I don't think it's going to do anything great. It is the sort of thing where I feel like there is a very certain audience for the Planet of the Apes series. I obviously fall in line with that. It almost has a cult following at this point. I feel like a lot of the people who came out for the first one because they love Planet of the Apes specifically, I think they're going to come back for this one just because it's yet another Planet of the Apes movie. But I think this opens up a larger, more interesting question about just marketing in general, because I wouldn't be surprised if this one fails in a way for similar reasons, not exactly the same, but similar reasons to why John Carter didn't fail. Because I remember you mentioned, Paul, talking about this one, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, how you're not really sure what it's about, is geared towards a very certain audience who's familiar with the franchise, that kind of stuff. Now me, like having seen the original, the entire original series, I know exactly like where they're going with this movie, what it's going to be about, that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like with John Carter, they were marketing that to people under the presumption that everyone knew what John Carter was, what it was about. They didn't even need to put Mars in the title because everyone knew that John Carter was a Civil War veteran who fought on Mars. And I think they're doing kind of a similar thing here, where obviously Planet of the Apes has a much wider audience. More people know what it is, but they're still kind of playing under the assumption of, oh, just the name Planet of the Apes is going to get people in theaters. Whereas, when they made John Carter, they thought just the name John Carter is all we need to do to get butts in those seats, And it might, and if they really want to pull more people in for this one, I think they really do need to show more of the plot, more of what this film's actually about, give you a better sense of the world, which they might in future trailers. I know we haven't had that many trailers so far, so I wouldn't be surprised if they show us more closer to the movie, but. Yeah, I think it's a fair assumption to say that this one probably is not going to do nearly as well as the first one.
I'm not sure how exactly where they're going with everything, because I've seen the entire original Planet of the Apes series as well, and it doesn't really follow the same sort of trajectory, does it?
No, it doesn't. This one's closer to Battle of the Planet of the Apes, basically. I mean, like the whole idea of the war between humans and apes. Battle for the Planet of the Apes was the one where we lived in a world for a while where the apes had kind of been evolving. They had their own society, and they've been kind of slowly exterminating out the humans. So I feel like that's what they're doing with this one. Is instead of going straight to Beneath the Planet of the Apes or Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, they just went straight from Planet of the Apes to Battle for the Planet of the Apes,
Beneath the Planet of the Apes is a weird movie.
out of all the Planet of the Apes sequels, that's probably the one that I enjoyed the most, just because it is really weird.
But that's I guess yeah. I mean that's a good point, and that it's interesting just because I feel like while I don't think Planet of the Apes is showing us enough because I still it just looks like there's going to be like repeated conflict between the rising society of the apes and the humans. Like I don't that doesn't sound interesting to me. And the what's I guess the interesting thing on the other side is that a movie like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I am very excited for, has probably shown people way too much of what the movie's about.
Yeah, do you remember when Amazing Spider-Man 1 came out and someone edited all the footage from the marketing together, all the different footage, and it came out to be like 25 minutes?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
it actually guessed at most of what happened in the movie.
yeah, I feel like that's pretty much happened with this one too.
Well, it's frustrating too because I felt like I was like ready to see the movie 3 trailers ago, and I know that's just me, but I I felt like people were gonna go. Spider-Man is a different story from like Planet of the Apes. I think that brand will get butts in seats no matter what. And I felt like they had shown us enough. And I don't care that they didn't keep the villain stuff a secret. I don't care about that. I think that's actually good that they didn't try and be like, no, Green Goblin's not in it, or something like that. But
Khan's not in this movie.
but I do think that they should not like. They came out with like 8 trailers or something ridiculous like that. And they all had a lot of different stuff in it. And while Joe, I know like you're really excited for Godzilla, and I think the special effects in that look pretty decent. The special effects in the most recent Spider-Man trailer look incredible. And maybe I'm just looking at it too closely, but like when he's like flying through the air and you can see like the wrinkles in his suit, and then like the slow motion stuff that's in there, like the graphics, the CGI or whatever, the action in that movie looks awesome. And I've heard it's kind of just like there was some really great action in the first Amazing Spider-Man as well. So I'm really excited to see it for that reason alone. That I don't know that they could have just kept showing us clips of the action and not shown us that Gwen Stacy's going to be in huge peril at some point in the film.
Yeah. It's funny because it's like it's like I agree that with a lot of these kind of bigger, higher profile movies, I do feel like they're showing a lot too much in a lot of these trailers. The funny thing about The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is that on the other hand, I keep forgetting that stuff like Rhino's in this movie, and I keep forgetting that because they may be given a couple cuts in the movie, but you really have no idea like what place it takes in the movie because they're focusing a lot stronger on kind of the Gwen and Spidey plot line, or the Electro plot line, or even more so on the Green Goblin plot line. But it's funny because I'm a little bit worried that this one's going to run into some kind of this one of the issues that Spider-Man 3 had, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, in that they try to cram too much of that stuff into one movie as opposed to focusing more on one. So I'm a little afraid that Rhino is not going to get his due because there is so much focus on the Electro plot. And
yeah, I mean they'll set him up for one of the billion sequels they're trying to set up right now. So
yeah.
I was going to say one more movie I'm really interested or excited for is Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I think we all are. And that, to me, that just looks like, I'm excited because it looks like a sci-fi space movie in the vein of Star Wars or Star Trek that isn't Star Wars or Star Trek. And that's why I'm excited to see it.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think more and more that filmmakers and film directors who make really hard R adult movies, I think they make some of the best kids movies. Scorsese with Hugo, he blew everyone away with that one. That is a very well made movie. Obviously, James Gunn is doing Guardians of the Galaxy, who he's done a lot of really kind of grotesque, violent adult comedies, I guess you say, horror comedies with Splice and Super, or not Splice, sorry, Slither and Super and that kind of stuff. So and Guardians of the Galaxy, I think because he's not afraid to be a little bit edgier and be a little more tongue-in-cheek, and because of his comedy background, I have a feeling that one's probably going to be one of the most entertaining Marvel movies to date, just in how different it is and how funny it is, just from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Two
Speaking
movies
of comedy,
that we haven't talked about, I think, are the comedies coming out this year. And I can't decide which one I'm more excited for. Although I'd probably have to give the advantage to the first one I'm going to talk about. But is 22 Jump Street and
yes, I was
Neighbors,
about to mention that.
and Neighbors. I'm excited for both of those. And just the trailers have consistently made me laugh, and I'm really excited to see what the movies deliver.
I'm really stoked to see 22 Jump Street because I love the first one, and I was excited to see Neighbors until I started reading about it. And maybe this will make some people probably want to see it more, but it's supposedly like the raunchiest R-rated comedy like ever. That's probably an exaggeration, but that's at least what I've read. That it had 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's only out of 17 reviews, but that's still a pretty good track record. I'm just really nervous to see. Okay, so no, that's the wrong one. But I'm just really nervous to see. Oh no, it's 100% with 11 reviews. But I'm really nervous to go see it because I feel like it's going to disappoint me. Because I feel like it's just going to be really raunchy and expect me to laugh at it. Which, yeah. Nick, I know you really liked This Is the End. And I thought This Is the End was really funny, but I have a really hard time recommending that movie to anybody. I'd rather tell them to go on YouTube and watch certain scenes of it rather than to watch the whole movie. Because it's just, I think the whole movie is just uncomfortable to watch.
That's fair, you know.
Yeah.
So I do think parts of it are hilarious. But dude, there's some weird stuff in This Is the End.
I think my favorite moment in that movie is when when like going up to heaven, he's like, "Screw you," and then like the light stops or whatever.
Oh yeah, like there's stuff like that that's great, and the scene with Emma Watson or whatever is hilarious. There's some great cameos in there too, and there's some really funny stuff in that movie, but then there's other stuff that's funny, but I don't know a single person who I could say you should watch this because of those scenes, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. One reason, I say out of both Neighbors and 22 Jump Street, both of them look really funny. I think 22 Jump Street though, if nothing else, just the names of Phil Lord and Chris Miller being behind this movie are getting me excited about it because they have 3 films under their belt, all 3 of them solid movies: Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, and the Lego Movie. And these guys, I mean, like for me, raunchy comedy is really hit and miss. A lot of stuff like This Is the End. I enjoyed This Is the End. There were moments I felt like it was just kind of being raunch for the sake of raunch and wasn't that funny. Then again, it had some really great moments too. I feel like they deal with that kind of humor really cleverly. And like 21 Jump Street, there is a lot of kind of raunchy and some offensive humor and that kind of stuff in there, but it's well written. They don't throw grotesque stuff in there just because you're like, oh, you know, raunch is funny. I mean, they use stuff like that to their advantage, and again, like you get really invested in the characters in these movies. The first one especially, which is why I really have hope that this one's gonna follow through kind of in that same kind of tone and the same sort of vein, you know.
Yeah, I just think, I mean, there's stuff in 21 Jump Street. I think I'm excited for both of them. I'll probably wait to hear about Neighbors, but I'm excited to see 22 Jump Street just because of 21 Jump Street. Like the humor in that is so well written, and like Joe said, there's definitely raunchy stuff in it, but it's cleverly used. And it's not just there like, look at this is funny because of what it is. It's like, no, it's funny because of the circumstances it's in.
Exactly.
And I think that makes it that much better of a movie. And I think Chris Miller and Phil Lord, I agree with Joe. I think they know what they're doing for sure. So yeah, does anyone else have anything else they want to talk about real quick?
No.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think will be the biggest hit of the summer? Just spitballing.
Shoot.
I wouldn't be
I mean, as
surprised
much
if
as like,
Spider-Man's up there. That one's kind of it's well known enough, accessible enough, has a wide enough audience. That one's probably gonna be pretty
wait, which
big.
one?
The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay, I'm thinking. I mean, just looking at it, like, even though I have a soft spot for these movies, even though I know they're not that great, and everyone acknowledges they're not that great, but I have a feeling that Transformers 4 will still prevail.
Dude, I don't know. I think I see what you're saying, but I'm starting to wonder if people are sick of Transformers movies.
That would be that'd be pretty cute. Like if that movie, if that or Spider-Man tanked, I think those would be the two big ones that would like make people rethink a lot of what's going on in Hollywood right now.
Yeah, I don't think either of them will tank. Um, but I think with Transformers, you watch the Transformers 4 trailer and you go back and watch the Transformers 3, 2, or even 1 trailer, they could all be the same movie.
Yeah,
Um, and I just wonder if I wonder if people are getting a little tired. Like I have no plans for seeing Transformers 4, you know, especially after seeing I like saw Transformers 1 in theaters, saw Transformers 2 in theaters, and then I was like, I guess I'll go see Transformers 3, and after Transformers 3, I was like, that was not worth it. And I maybe that was just me, but and I guess by the amount of money it made, it might have been just me. But I don't know, like it's been a while since that last one, and I'm just wondering if that's old news by now.
yeah.
But I think it's gonna go to. I think it could go to Transformers 4. But I think it's gonna go to Spider-Man or Godzilla.
I don't think Godzilla's gonna do super big.
I feel like Godzilla and Planet of the Apes are in the same boat.
Yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah. I think
Yeah,
so.
I think they're both old franchises that everyone knows about, and I mean it's one of those things where it's like I mean I part of me wants to give Godzilla the edge just because it's mass destruction, and we know people go to see that regardless of what the movie is.
And Bryan Cranston.
And Bryan Cranston, but I think those movies are both very will probably be very close.
I think
No, I
I
think
think
Godzilla's. I think the buzz surrounding Godzilla is really, really good. Like just even people coming out of the trailers, like coming out of a movie, a lot of times they'll like people will just talk about the Godzilla trailer.
Yeah,
I think the buzz for that I think it's gonna do much bigger than you guys are giving it credit for.
yeah. I think they're both in the same boat as far as well. First off, I think Godzilla's going to do a lot better than Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Just for one thing, again, there is a lot more buzz around that one. I mean, like I know that Nick, you and I are talking about Dawn of the Planet of the Apes a lot, but outside of like our circle, I don't really hear a whole lot of people talking about that one. Whereas I do hear people getting excited for Godzilla. But I do think they're both in the same boat as in I think they're both going to have really big opening weekends and then just kind of peter off after that. You're not really going to see a whole lot of them.
I think
People talk about them after.
I think that depends on how good they are. If people see them and think they're really good and just keep talking about them, then that'll obviously help them a ton. But I think, yeah, I don't know. I definitely don't think X-Men, unfortunately, as expensive of a movie it was, I don't think it's gonna do the numbers that they're hoping for.
yeah.
Probably going to do decently. I'm not sure. I mean, like, how did the Wolverine do last year?
It didn't do huge, but I mean, it made back its money and then some.
Yeah.
I think the problem, like, I think that'll be an interesting thing to see because it's obvious that after the Avengers, X-Men and Spider-Man are both looking to make their own cinematic universes, and so I feel like each of these movies, like, is their attempt to try to get Avengers money, but I don't think it's going to work as well as it did for Marvel.
Yeah. To answer your question, Joe, Wolverine made 415 million worldwide.
Oh, okay.
So it did pretty well. It had a production budget of around 120 million.
Yeah.
So it did solid. It got 130 million in the U.S. So um, Amazing Spider-Man 2 has already hit 132 million.
Yeah, that's another problem I have, which is that like that movie came out last week in other countries, and we have to wait 2 weeks for it. I mean, I know, I guess that's the way the world is going, where like foreign is more important than
I'm just
America.
more annoyed that the movie takes place in New York and it hasn't been released in New York yet.
Yeah, that's what well, that's because you were in New York this week, but like, I mean, just to me, like, I remember there were huge controversies like years ago that like studios wanted all their movies released like on the same day and date all around the world to like stop piracy, but it's like I'm sure if you looked hard enough, you could find the movie already online and hasn't even come out in America yet, you know? And it's just I don't know, I just feel kind of like, it's a movie that's made in America based on American characters and whatever, and just kind of feels weird that like not 1 week, but like 2 whole weeks before it comes out here, it's already playing overseas. You
Yeah.
know? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Anyway, we sort of gotta wrap things up, guys. But that was our podcast for the day. Nick, where can people find more of your work online?
They can find me on Twitter at Shout92.
Joe?
Find me at Credo Films.
All right, and you can follow me at PFDuda on Twitter. And again, you can find more of our episodes as well as articles and film news, analysis on our website, the-letterbox.com. You can find us on iTunes by searching for Outside the Letterbox and on Feedburner. I think next week we're going to be talking maybe about Spider-Man 2, if we all get a chance to do it, but we'll figure that out later. So tune in next week. Thanks again. Bye.